I try to bring something humorous as I begin, and this time, for this week, I found a story about this man. He took his wife out on a really nice date, and they were having this wonderful, in this wonderful restaurant, having a dinner. And when the dinner came out, and they set it at his table, suddenly, out of nowhere, this monkey jumps out, up on the table, grabs his dinner, and runs away with it. He couldn't believe it. And so he called over the waiter and said to the waiter, "Waiter, what is going on? This monkey just came and took my dinner." He said, "Well, yes, I'm sorry, that monkey belongs to the piano player. If you'd like to go talk with him, you're welcome to do that." So the man gets up, he marches right on there over to the piano, and he says, "Excuse me, but he says, "Excuse me, but do you know your monkey stole my dinner?" And the piano player says, "Well, no, but if you hum a few bars, maybe I can play it for you." I really like that one. I thought it was clever. All right. Well, so last week we began this series, 40 Days of Fellowship, and it was talking about how you're formed for fellowship. And what we really learned, that a life without love means nothing. We can't do anything to impress God if we don't have love in our life. We looked at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, often called the love chapter, which teaches us how to love. But lastly, most week we focused on what a life without love looks like. And there were 5 pretty radical statements about that. And that when we really look at what it's saying there, it's almost unfathomable, if you will. It's really hard to even grasp just how strong it's saying, as it looks at faith and it looks at service and all kinds of things. It said, but if we don't live without love, it means nothing to God. So this week the theme is reaching out together. And each week it's going to carry an idea of what does it look like to do this together, to live this Christian life together. And this week what we want to start to learn is a little bit more about what that loving life looks like. How can we live a life of love then? And the first thing that we see is that love is kind. Love is kind. It was the next verse in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, that just said, love is kind. Well, what does it mean to be kind? What is kindness? We probably have some immediate ideas, some immediate thoughts in terms of how we maybe talk or treat one another. But understand that to God, kindness is about action. Kindness is an action. Kindness is what we do for others. It's how we treat people. It's how we act towards people. It's what we say to people. It's what we do for people. Kindness is an action. It's not about words. It's not about feelings. But it's about how we act. 1 John 3:18 says this rather directly. He says, "Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth." God is looking for us to act kind in how we live and what we do. I thought this was kind of cute. I just happened across it as I was actually looking for some other things. But it said, if you want, don't take this literal. Okay, this is actually really horrible. But if you want, if you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. Yeah. If you want happiness for a month, buy a new car. If you want happiness for a year, win the lottery. But if you want happiness for a lifetime, be kind to people. No, that's the last one's the only one I really want you to remember. Kindness is how we should live. Kindness is showing and acting and doing things out of love. This is so necessary because what we recognize, what we need to see is that kindness is actually the antidote to selfishness. Kindness and living our lives to serve others is one of the most important lessons of love, because it's the first way that we learn to think less about ourselves and more about others. Last week, as we read from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, we got down into the bottom part, and I said that we'll revisit this chapter throughout this series in different times. But down in verse 11, after it gave these descriptions of love, verse 11 said, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. You see, as Christians, we are supposed to grow up. I'm seeing some smirks. Did you see the little kid? Oh, did you have that kid up there helping the dog yet? Was that on there? Yeah, that's pretty cute. I like it as a little child. We're supposed to, the Bible's saying that we're supposed to move away from childish things and into adult things. Away from childish ways in thinking and in reasoning and in action, and become more grown up. Well, I want to suggest to you this morning that maturity is about responsibility. How many of you know somebody that needs to grow up and start taking responsibility for their life? How many of you brought that person with you today? Okay. Okay, well, go ahead. You can turn to him and say, you're supposed to grow up and be mature. You see, childishness is about what I want. But maturity is about what I can do and what I take responsibility for. I took my grandson with me, my 6-year-old grandson with me, to pick out a birthday present for Melody. Went to Melody's birthday party. I took my 6-year-old shopping with me to pick out a present. That was a mistake. I gave him the rules before we walked into Walmart. We are here to pick out a gift for Melody. We are only going to buy a gift for Melody. We are only looking for things that a 5-year-old girl would like. We walked through the door, and he ran to grab basketballs and start bouncing them around the store. Everything he saw, he wanted. He wanted shoes. He wanted hats. He found some zombie claw that he wanted to grab. I said, I don't think a 5-year-old girl wants a zombie claw. He was just getting all this stuff. He wanted candy, and every toy that he saw, he had to pick it up and look at it. And can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have this? I said, oh my goodness. You're my son all over again. Oh. I know. We are supposed to grow up because that's the childish way. It was a little bit frustrating and it was a little bit cute. It was both of those things. But because you kind of expect that with this 5-6-year-old. You understand. That's what kids do. But we're supposed to grow up and move away from selfishness and what do I want, what for me, and how I can get, and learn to pick up and take on responsibility. Maturity is about seeing that. You see, selfishness is inward focus, and maturity is outward focus. And I like this. I was listening to a guy, he said, they say this all the time in the church. We might need to adopt this. That some people grew up in church, but they never grew up in church. See, we're supposed to grow up and look at our life, our relationship with Christ, and how we live a life of love is about a willingness to take on responsibility in how we live and what we do. We're going to look at a story from Mark chapter 6 this morning and hopefully bring some of this together and look at what Jesus did to be kind to a gathering of people. And we're going to notice the disciples didn't want this responsibility. And Jesus says, well, guess what? You're going to do it. So Mark chapter 6, beginning in verse 35. People have been following Jesus all day long. And it said that when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send the people away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages so they can buy themselves something to eat. But he answered to them, you give them something to eat. And they said to him, shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat? And he said to them, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. And when they had found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. When he commanded them all to sit down in groups of green grass, so they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces and of the fish. And those who had ate the loaves were 5,000 men. So I said we're going to talk about reaching out together. And here's an opportunity where Jesus saw this crowd. He takes compassion upon them, and he wants to demonstrate an act of kindness. He wants to feed them all. The disciples said, we can't do this. The hour is late. It would take way too much money. It would take way too much time. Can't we just send the people home? And Jesus says, no. He recognized the need. You have I want to remind you, got your little note sheet inside if you want to use it this morning, and we'll go through them. But the first thing that we need to learn how to do in the area of kindness is learn how to recognize the need. Sometimes we want to be kind, or we want to do what we want to do. But we have to step back and look at what is the need. Where can we get involved? It's getting late. People are getting hungry. They're in this desolate place. There wasn't anything around. And Jesus recognized that they were getting hungry. Maybe there was some beginning talk about this through the crowd. And the disciples came to him and said, hey, we need to send the people home. Recognize that there were 5,000 men, it said at the end. That means there was also women there. There was probably also children there. We're talking about a lot of people, and the disciples wanted to send them away. They even point out, and this is interesting to note, that you wouldn't necessarily see this in the text, but they said, well, should we go out and buy 200 denarii worth of food? This is more than half a year's wages. They recognize, hey, we're talking about, and we'll put that into, what would that be in our vernacular? $15,000, $20,000 worth just of bread to feed these people. But what does Jesus say? He says, no, you feed them. You give them something to eat. You take care of it. Sometimes when we see the need, we think, I hope somebody will do something. Boy, that's really unfortunate. But where and when does God say to us, no, you feed them. You take care of it. Do you know what God's plan is for every single problem that's in the world today? You are. You are God's answer. You are God's solution. You are God's plan A, and there is no plan B here. For every problem, every situation, God's only plan is to work through people to serve the world around us. Now, He'll help us, He blesses us, He guides us, He uses, but we are His hands and His feet. Spokane Gives is an initiative by Mayor Condon that he is challenging different sectors of society to give back to the neighborhood. And this is there's a little note in your folder about Spokane Gives. And in the faith community, the recommendation is to take April 1st through the 7th, to find ways to serve the community. And amongst those churches involved in community and schools, which we are, because you know that we take food kits to Whitman Elementary School and help feed children on the weekends, the recommendation is to do something for teacher appreciation. And so we've been talking a little bit about that. Craig and Marilyn have been championing that cause in helping to get the food kits together. And we've been talking with GU Law because they're our partner in this, and thought about some ways that we could serve or do something for the teachers and staff at Whitman Elementary School. And so on March 29th, we're going to gather here, and we're just going to make some little cards and things, and then we're going to end up building or putting together kind of a snack bar. So when they come in on Monday morning after spring break, they're going to walk in, and the plan is that their break room will just be full of all kinds of contraband that's really not supposed to be in the school, and they're gonna with candy and sodas and things, and but also we're looking for healthy ideas too, like raisins and granola bars. But we just want to load it up, and so they can come in at any time and just get a snack and sit down and have a break. But just know that we're thinking about them and care. We appreciate our teachers, our school staff, and the incredibly difficult job of raising and helping our kids today. So put that in your calendar, and if you'd like to come and help us put together things. But we just are recognizing that was not what I was thinking. I wasn't looking at it at all. The suggestion just came that maybe we could do something for teacher appreciation, and so we are. So we have to look around and recognize the need. Second of all, take inventory. What do you have? What could you offer? The disciples think that the idea is crazy because it would take so much money just to buy bread. Half a year's wages just to buy bread. And Jesus says, okay, you don't have that, so go find out what you do have. Find out what you can give, what you can provide. I think often we look at what we don't have when Jesus wants us to take inventory of what we do. It's crazy to think that our little church would take on the effort of serving children thousands and thousands of miles away in Kenya. When this came up, it's just kind of normal and natural for us to talk about it now, but when it first came up 8 years ago, I was thinking back, we didn't even have a children's ministry here back then. It's so exciting today to see Donna take off with 15, 20 kids or whatever, plus the nursery's got more kids, the toddler's room got more kids. There's kids everywhere running around. 8, 9 years ago, when we started thinking about this ministry into Kenya, Ray Ann is probably the oldest kid down there that's been here the longest. She's 7, right? Almost 8. So even Ray, our oldest kid, wasn't even here when we started working in Kenya. And it's no secret that we are a small church in a poor neighborhood. And when the opportunity came to help the ministry over there, it started really with helping the church with just a little bit of kind of missionary support, if you will. And it started to grow, but to think back, it just doesn't make sense in our minds to think about what the ministry is today. But we didn't think of it that way. We just said, well, what do we have? What can we do? And we had about $100 a month set aside for missionary support, and we said, well, we could send that. Let's start with that. And as I reported to you, last year, over 40% of our budget last year went into missions and ministry. We had every excuse you could think of that we couldn't do this, that this wasn't for us, it's too far away, we don't have the money, we don't have the manpower, we can't really. But all I can say is we just so clearly felt like God was saying, do something. Look at what you have, give that, and use that, and then let's just see what God does. And it's incredible. It's mind-boggling to think of where we are today. God is asking you to take inventory of what you do have. Do you have a home? Do you have a little bit of money? Do you have skills, hobbies, or interests that you could somehow leverage for the kingdom of God? Years ago, a lady by the name of Nora Sins Hunter was inspired to challenge women to work together to raise money for mission work at home and abroad. And she challenged them to use any skill they had, baking, cooking, sewing, whatever the gift, give it to God and raise money for the effort of expanding the gospel all over the world. This ministry began in the middle of the Great Depression, and it still collected thousands of dollars for mission because one woman had an idea, and the Women of the Church of God was born. It's so easy for us to be sitting around thinking, I can't do that, I don't have the money, I'm not a good teacher, I'm not an outgoing person, I don't have time, I'm not a leader, I don't have the skill for that, or whatever. Hey, God is asking you, what do you have that you could use for Him? So take inventory. Third, recognize that they got organized. They had everyone sit down on the grass in groups of 50 and 100. Their delivery system for giving out food to the people required them to organize into groups. And we don't have the details of how that helped or what that meant. I guess it made little pathways to get around, and you could set food in their area and then they could pass it to each other. Whatever it was, it made sense. And Jesus said, we need to organize these people into groups, and then we will be able to feed them together. If you want to act in kindness, there's a place to get organized and a way to make a plan. If you want to do good works, you have to make a plan. You have to be proactive about it. You have to determine that you're going to get involved where you feel God is leading you to get involved. You're not going to make an impact in the world by accident. And if we just live our lives going from day to day thinking that, well, I'll just look for ways to be kind, then changing the world is just wishful thinking. And we all can sit back and point out everything that's wrong. It's easy to look around and say that this is no good or that's not working. But who is willing to actually address an issue and make a plan to make a difference? Fourth, you need to measure the need. Look at what they do next. It can almost be missed because it's a short little piece, but it says that Jesus broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to go and set before the people. And He divided the 2 fish among them all. So Jesus is picking up bread, breaking it in half, and hands it out. And He keeps picking up bread and breaking it, handing it out. And then He grabs fish, He breaks that in half somehow, hands it out. And He just keeps grabbing and breaking, from beginning with 5 loaves and 2 fish. He keeps breaking, and every time He took bread or fish and He handed it out, there was more still to pick up. But He handed it as He was providing and as He was preparing. And this incredible miracle was happening around the multiplication of this bread and these fish. He kept handing it to the disciples, and they would go and deliver it. Jesus worked together with the disciples to hand out the food. He didn't tell them, okay, take a seat, I've got it from here. You found the bread and the fish. I'm going to go ahead and take care of the rest of the miracle. He kept them involved. He kept them in the act of service, and He used them because even though Jesus was performing this miracle, it really only happened because they worked together to accomplish the serving of the food. We can do more together than we can by ourselves. We can organize and work together to do things that make a difference. And this is where reaching out together begins to come into play. So we're not just saying, go out and be kind. Okay, go out and buy a coffee for the person behind you. Go out and, you could do those kinds of things. But those kinds of kindness kind acts just teach us that there's more to do. And by strategy, by planning, by looking at areas of need, we can figure out ways to work together and make real impact because we work as a team. And we've been talking about the development of fellowship groups. And these groups can be dinner groups. And we have dinner groups. We've got groups that get together for barbecues and birthday parties. We have groups that get, our worship team is a group. We have a group of men that meet together to pray together and talk about things going on in their lives. Just lots of different reasons to have groups come together and work. And we want to elevate that value amongst us to create even more small groups so that anybody that wants fellowship can be a part of it. But the best small groups are the ones that see each other as a way to come together and work together for a purpose. For the purpose of making an impact on the world. Together, you can work to bring friends and neighbors and family members across the threshold of faith into a relationship with Jesus Christ. A group could form to go and serve down at Second Harvest, putting Bite to Go kits together. Our prayer team that meets here every week, now they're talking about, well, maybe why don't we just have a dinner together, a tea together. And then they're also talking about, and could we do something else that gets involved in our community or around us or wherever God would show us that there's a need. If you want to make a real impact, you have to work with a team of people, because when you measure the need, you see that there's a lot of need. And if we want to do something that actually makes a difference, we need to work together. It's why we're asking for volunteers and help to do the Candy Dash. If we do have 500 kids show up, we're going to need an army of adults to be there and make sure that that wildness stays in control. But we want to demonstrate that we love our community and our churches care about our kids in our neighborhood, and that we're here. We're trying to get outside the church and do something that just demonstrates that to them. And the only way it's going to happen is if we work together. If people are willing to say, yeah, I'll help. I'll help. Number 5, prepare your heart. Jesus took the 2 fish, the loaves, and the bread, and the Bible says that he looked to heaven and he said a blessing. Hey, the disciples were actually right at the beginning of this thing, weren't they? They didn't have enough to feed all those people. They didn't have what it took to make this happen. They saw that the need was greater than their ability to respond. And they recognized that they would be quickly overwhelmed if they did anything to even try. And it required that God performed a miracle to make this happen. And it was, again, an opportunity for Jesus to demonstrate his divinity and why he came. As he blessed the bread and he blessed the fish, and it multiplied into being enough for these tens of thousands of people. And it was amazing. And so Jesus shows this example of looking to heaven and thanking God for what they've been given, and seeking that God would make it enough to do what they've been asked to do. 2 Corinthians 9:11 says, "You will be enriched in every way to be generous in every way, which through us will produce thanksgiving to God." We need to get this right, because sometimes we want God to bless us so that our life will be more comfortable and more easy, that he'll take care of our needs. But the Bible says that God blesses you so that you can be a blessing to others. And we need to get our heart right on this issue and this idea. The reason God's blessing you, and the reason God does any good thing in your life, is so that you can then turn that around to do good in others' lives, in other people's lives. And through that goodness, through that kindness, through that action, they will then give thanks to God. Because we say, it's not me, it is God working in me. I am blessing you because He first blessed me. I love you because He first loved me. I am serving you because He first came and walked amongst us and laid down His life for me. We seek after God so that He can prepare our heart, because the challenge is great. The needs are many. We don't have what it takes to provide what the world needs. But when we offer up thanksgiving and blessing before the Lord, and we offer Him and say, this is what I can give to you, Father. Please use it for your glory. And we set our heart right before Him. Then He can take it and He can do the amazing with your small offering. And the last one is just to be available. After Jesus blessed the fish and the loaves, He gave it to the disciples. They handed it out to everyone. And they started passing it out. The food was multiplied. And that was the first miracle. But notice the second miracle was that everyone was satisfied. They not only had enough to feed everyone, they had enough to feed everyone to the fullest of their desire. They ate until they're satisfied. Do you know today what a blessing it is to give? How blessed we are that we can give. And what a joy it is to give and to serve and to take what God has given you and with that show kindness to others. When you serve and you bless and show acts of kindness, it makes a difference. But we have to be available to the Lord to enter in and enjoy that blessing. You know, yesterday for a lot of us was a tough day. It was a busy day, a long day. I think it's no secret that Marie's son has passed away about a week ago. And so we laid him to rest yesterday, doing the funeral and so on. And then afterwards, we came back and we had a meal, as we've done many times, a lunch. And many of you provided food or came and helped set up or stayed after and cleaned. And I cannot tell you how many times I have talked with family members after those dinner, and they have just been so overwhelmed with gratitude, overwhelmed with thanksgiving, because their family was served in a time of need. And boy, it was just a couple weeks ago, we had Bob's service, and we figured there were over 350 people here for that service. So that was just amazing. And we were still exhausted from that one, and here comes another one. So yesterday's was a little bit of work. It was a joy, it was a blessing, but it was also just a little bit of work. And those of us here, we were tired, and we were kind of feeling it in our feet. And dishpan hands came out of the kitchen. And sore backs were walking out from downstairs. And for some of us, we left here with not a lot left on the bone. And but we were just able to serve. And I know their family was so thankful. When we do these meals, we just Diane worked in the cafeteria. As you know, she's a manager over there in the kitchen at Rogers High School. And so she has seen very upfront, very, very closely how important food is in our lives. And I think that they take it seriously, that they are feeding students for their education. And so she's kind of indoctrinated us that these lunches mean so much to these families, because you come back and you can bless them and you can love on them and just provide an act of kindness. But then you also provide a necessary function, because everybody needs to eat. So you can be kind, you can provide an important service. But then they come back and they're sitting around the tables, and what happens? They're all sharing memories and stories, and that you continue the healing. Elon said this last week, that sharing memories is God's salve for the healing of the soul. And when they're sitting around and talking about the person they just lost, that healing is continuing in their soul as they're trying to say goodbye to somebody they love. And then fourth, it also just reminds that family in their grief that then life now continues on. You can go forward. It's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to still eat and be a part of family, and you're kind of, when you've lost somebody, you're in that spot where you just don't know what you're supposed to do. And it says, okay, life is different now, but it continues. And so that simple act of sharing a meal can be so profound in a family. But it took a whole army to make it happen. It took people saying, yes, I can bring food. Yes, I can set up. Yes, I can clean up. Yes, I can serve. Yes, I can get involved. You have to be available if you're going to serve God in bringing His glory into the world. If you want to be kind, you have to be available to what God is asking or calling you to do. And if that's in the area of being a part of a small group or serving on some team or doing something, if you want to make that impact, you have to be available. So we want to reach out together. Where and who will you partner with and work with to make a difference? Start asking the Lord to show you an area. Let's pray. Father, we give you thanks.